Hello, StarCraft fans. This is ESFI World. We're reporting from the NASL 3 finals. We're sitting down with EG IdrA and EG iNcontroL. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Doing good, thank you.
Good, yeah.
Great. Is this your first time in Canada?
No, I've been to Toronto a couple of times before, but first time for a StarCraft tournament.
And growing up in Seattle, I went to Vancouver a few times. We played a football game there, and I also played a couple baseball games. Canadians are great people. Good times.
Have you been in the city yet, Toronto?
This time, no. We've been stuck in the airport, in the hotel, in the venue. I've been there before. It's an awesome city.
Fantastic. Now, today we see you in a different role than usually. You both are casting several of the games we've seen today. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of preparation you might do for the casting gigs as opposed to playing in these tournaments?
Not really anything at all, honestly. I'm the analytical guy. I have the easier job. I kind of just talk about StarCraft, explain the strategy, explain what's going on in the game. And that's pretty much, the preparation for that is playing. That's what I do all the time. Plus, whenever we're not playing, we're kind of talking about it. That's just, we live in a house with 5, 6 StarCraft players and a bunch of other people whose lives revolve around StarCraft. So it's the topic of most of our conversation. So get a lot of practice for that just going in. One thing I probably should prepare more for the other matchups strategically. I don't really know that much about Terran. Geoff's obviously a Protoss player. He can't help out as much with that when I'm missing on knowledge. So maybe I should do that, but honestly, no real preparation at all.
Yeah, I mean, to echo his sentiments, I think a big advantage and one of the things you kind of see come away from Home Story Cup is that what we as players do on a daily basis would be what a caster should do as much as they possibly can to prepare for an event. So I think one of the dividing factors between does a player make a good commentator or not is what's their rapport with an actual commentator? Do they have the personable skills to be a good communicator? And can they make it exciting? Because it's one thing to know a lot about a game, but it's another to convey that in an entertaining fashion. And I think that's part of the reason why Greg and I make a good commentating duo is because he's going to know a lot about the game. He's an extremely good resource that way. And we have such a good rapport and we've been friends for so long that it's really easy for me to shoot a joke at him and he knows that it's a joke without necessarily being a good one, and he can bounce it back off in a good way. So I almost feel guilty because I really think, like, people constantly ask, when you take a casting gig, is that time away from StarCraft? And for me, it's almost like a big research gathering event, and it's also a nice vacation. Like, I'm not stressed this whole time. I'm having a good time. I'm meeting new people, and I'm doing something that I would find really, really fun. It's weird to say would there. I guess I just do find it fun. So when I go home, I'm motivated and amped to get right back to work and playing. And then also, there's another casting gig on the horizon, so it's just kind of rinse, repeat that way.
Now, with regard to marketability and general mass appeal, EG seems to have set that as a higher priority than most teams. Do you think other teams are missing out here?
Oh, absolutely. That you can just tell the amount of money EG has to throw around. All the sponsors we have, nothing else comes close to that. That's obviously what you can sell to sponsors, what brings money into the industry. That's what really makes us valuable. Like, you can have a player win a tournament, but if they're not sold right, if they don't have a personality to back it up, they can disappear the next month. Everyone forgets about them. Like, excuse me. I had a really good tournament run at the end of last year, but after 2 or 3 months after that, without any tournament results, people were talking about how I was slumping, I was over my prime. But I'm still relevant, I'm still important because people still follow my personality, because they like everything else I do on top of the playing. And if you look at other teams, like something we talked about a lot, Mouse Sports actually sold naming rights. They have CC for card coaches card coaches in their name right now, and most people still don't know what that means. Like, I just didn't know. And if you actually give a sponsor that much influence over your brand, and they're giving you a lot in return for that, and then people still don't even know what it means, that's like you're failing your sponsors. That is our primary goal, really, as an advertisement agency for all these companies that are putting money into esports. That's really what we're here to do. Winning stuff, that's additional attention, and that's what we want to do, personally. That's our personal goals. But that in itself doesn't really help our sponsors unless we attach them to our success. So, that is really our primary goal in some ways, and it's incredibly important.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting subject because, you don't have to look too far to see. I don't want to call it discomfort, but the interest from the community. They look at EG in a different light, and a lot of times they're, I guess you could use the word uncomfortable with how forward EG is with putting themselves out there. Running bar crafts, sending players out to commentate, hosting their own league. These are pathfinding ways that other leagues are not getting their or not leagues but teams are not getting their name out that way. And what I find so interesting about that is because it gets us a lot of exposure, does a lot of good for EG. There's just no question about that. But it's pushing the boundaries of what a team is in StarCraft, but really in esports on the greater whole. And I think what's really cool is that as gaming becomes more legitimate and as StarCraft 2 in particular goes up and is on the rise, you can really see those that are kind of thinking outside the box, e.g. to name one of the big companies, they're being rewarded for that. So, I mean, Greg and I often talk about this. It's a little bit disappointing that, to be completely blunt, the one other team that's doing anywhere near as good of a job is Team Liquid. I mean, their documentary, their players have a story to them. We can follow them. Dario is one of the fan favorites of the entire community. But I need to see an Empire. I need to see a MAU as a complexity. I want to know their stories, and I want EG to have competition for that media so that the entire scene on a greater whole can actually grow up and raise. Because I think that's the direction it has to go. Should players split their time between media and playing? Probably not. I don't think that's good. There should be players, and there should be personalities, and there should be casters, and it shouldn't blend too much there. But I think it would be wise for teams to invest in at least experimenting and pushing those boundaries.
With regard to expanding esports to new fans that, let's say, have never watched a StarCraft game, do you think, how big of a hurdle do you think is the general stereotype of geeks living in a basement playing video games? Do you think that's something that needs to be eventually overcome for esports to take that next step?
It's still around in our, within our culture to an extent, but everyone plays video games now. You see all those studies, the median age of gamers is like 35 or something. Everyone plays games, and a lot of it isn't competitive StarCraft or computer games or whatever. That is a more hardcore community, and so we do have to kind of push them into that and think that's acceptable. But we already have our foot in the door. Xbox, Wii, especially Wii, and the other, the more family-friendly consoles, those are really, really pushing those boundaries for us and making gaming itself acceptable. And from there into esports is a very small jump relative to what we had when anyone who used a computer or a console or anything was a basement-dwelling geek. I don't think that is really that pervasive in our culture at all anymore.
Yeah, I think it's funny. It's actually almost on a completely mainstream level. The geek or nerd thing is being kind of owned, and it's not the same. Like if you look at a 1980s frat house movie or like a sports movie, the geek is the really skinny guy in the sweater vest with glasses as big as his head. Now a geek is sometimes the guy that takes his clothes off and he's Spider-Man or something like that. Like that's kind of what's becoming more accommodating. But I think even going beyond that, I'm not sure if the hurdle for esports and gaming in general is going to be the stereotypes. What I think it is the interest level. If I'm clicking through the TV or the internet or whatever, and I see a StarCraft game, if I know nothing about it, is there enough being presented to me for me to sit there and say, what is this? If we can't answer that question, if we can't engage that question, then specifically StarCraft, I think, will have more to go. But if I'm flipping through and I see Justin Wong facing off in Street Fighter or Marvel, maybe I do stick around because that's a little bit more accessible. It's a little bit more easy for me to grab. So then we start asking questions like, well, are the commentators doing what they need to do to make that engaging as well? And I think different fields of gaming can answer that in different ways. Right now, if I was being blunt, in the fighting game arena, I don't think so. I think it can be pretty abrasive, and I think it can be very intracultural. Like it's very much so a fighting game way to commentate that. And in StarCraft 2, some commentators, they talk above the average person's station, so they don't know what's going on. Whereas I think Day 9 does a great job making the game really exciting and engaging for people of all shapes and sizes, to put it in a weird way.
You both spent some time in Europe recently. Can you talk a little bit about how that perception differs across the pond compared to North America?
Well, it's kind of harder to analyze there because when we go to Europe, it's 99% for gaming stuff. We spend our time around other gamers at gaming venues, interacting with fans in the audience and whatnot. And obviously, anyone who comes out to an event, they're already going to be pretty open to the idea, no matter what the general cultural, perspective is. But if you look at something like DreamHack, that's a big event that a ton of people go to, and it's been around for a long time. It's like a big LAN party, almost a national LAN party. It's something that people mark off on their calendars every year and go to. And I get the impression that gaming is much, much more accepted, much more widespread there. But yeah, it is quite a bit harder to judge just because we don't experience the regular everyday culture there. But if you go out and you meet other people, they ask what you're doing, why you're there for a gaming tournament, you don't get weird looks. They're interested in it. They want to know more about it. They're not judging you or thinking that's weird or unusual. It's just really cool. And a lot of them have heard about stuff like that before. particularly in some countries, Germany and Sweden and whatnot. Germany and Sweden in particular, gaming seems to be quite big already.
Well, I think DreamHack's an amazing example. If there was going to be a secondary one, it would be like the Iron Squid tournament. People had found France to be a little bit of an untested proving ground in terms of StarCraft, and they came out in flying colors. I think it's much the same as it is here in the United States, where in the super mainstream, it's still more focused on action sports or just more mainstream things, whereas gaming, I think it has a little bit of a louder voice. They've had a more competitive scene for a longer period of time. I think ESL has been on TV. I know that SVT for Sweden is starting to entertain the idea of gaming, so it's definitely making headway, and it's been there a little bit longer. But I would compare both the United States and Europe to be pretty similar in that fashion. And again, as Greg said, like, I'm not a European expert. When I'm there, it's mostly for gaming, so I probably have a pretty skewed perspective.
If I could get a little more in depth regarding your time in Europe, iNcontroL, can you talk about the casting you did for DreamHack and the other tournaments?
You know, I really, really, really value my time with DreamHack, and it's the people that run it do an awesome job. Sweden has an amazing fan base. If I hadn't gone to Canada, I would say without a shadow of a doubt they're the most enthused, engaged, and excitable crowd that I've ever stood in front of. I think what's really important for me in DreamHack is that they allow me to do things there that I was otherwise not doing. I have not hosted for other events. And I've been well received because that's something that I'm actually very passionate about. Like, StarCraft is obviously very close to my soul, and it's in the very fiber of my being. It's what I need to do. But public speaking, entertaining, and being a host in general is something that is very close to what I did as a hobby in college with debate team and speech team. It's just something I really like to do. And DreamHack provides that opportunity for me. So not only am I seeing a different part of the world, but I'm also doing something that I won't do at an MLG because of sponsor conflicts. I have not done for NASL because I was a commentator. So it's just very important to me to respect them for that because they've given me such great opportunities.
And IdrA, you had a little bit of a resurgence at Home Story Cup. Can you talk about how you're going to try to carry that momentum forward?
A lot of it, I feel, comes down to just the ability to finally, well, not finally, but the ability to have been practicing well for quite a long time. People underestimate like the effect of momentum on your performance. Last time when I came back to the U.S. at first from Korea, I still did well even though I wasn't really practicing that much for a few months. You don't start to drop off immediately when you lack in practice. It takes a while. Your existing skill carries you until people start to get past you, and it takes time to lose that skill that you have. And then in the same light, once you do start practicing in, once you do have more time to devote to the game, then it takes a long time to catch back up with everyone, get your skill back on par, catch up with the meta game, figure out what other people are doing. And that is kind of what happened here. I had that tournament run at the end of last year that really took a lot out of me. I had 2 months with literally almost no practice, just a day here and there whenever I got to settle down in between being jet lagged. And that takes a lot out of you. I go back to Korea, I practice a lot, but that also kind of messes with you because the metagame's so different over there. The ladder is so brutal. It actually scares you a bit to play. Like, you stop taking some of the risks that you absolutely have to take to be a competitive tournament player. And so now I'm finally back in the U.S. in a very comfortable environment, living with my friends, having people to talk to about the game while practicing 24/7. And I feel that's finally just starting to take effect. I'm getting my skill back to where it needs to be. And yeah, I 3-0'd that first day. It wasn't the best players, but they were very good players, and I felt very satisfied with my play. The second day, obviously disappointing, but it was just I was playing bad that day. I hadn't slept well enough. I was just making mistakes that I know I normally would not, even with my current state of play, and I could see how I could win those games. So losses, but encouraging losses. And yeah, as I said, I feel this is just a result of being back into the proper practice environment for myself, and it's just going to carry on as long as I keep practicing.
We're about halfway through 2012. Could you guys talk a little bit about your expectations and goals for the second half, both individually and as a team?
Well, going into the year, I said that my goal was to win a major tournament with a bunch of Codesk Koreans participating, like an MLG or an IPL or whatnot. However, the first half of my year was honestly just so disappointing. Right now, I'm just focused on getting back to where I feel I should be. I should be, a top placing player, a top caliber tournament player, someone who's competing for the title of best foreigner, if nothing else. So I'm just kind of focused on getting myself good again, and then I'll start looking at actual goals.
Almost the same, only a little bit lower on the high end, a lot higher on the low end. My results have always been bad for a while now, so it's very easy for me to be pleased with something. But My most recent major tournament was MLG Anaheim, which I felt really strong going into, but coming away from it, I think it's probably my worst tournament ever. WCS and MLG Anaheim were both extreme disappointments, and I don't have any super awesome excuse. I don't have to say, like, you know, my dog died or something like that the day of or something. Nothing like that happened. It was just a really bad tournament for me. So for the next 6 months, I'm still going to be maintaining my practice schedule. I'm going to be constantly working on adapting and evolving that, including more custom games, that kind of stuff. But I'm happy with my level of play. Going into like this year, my ladder was a lot higher. It was a lot more inconsistent. My custom games, I was much more of kind of a mediocre practice partner. Now I feel like I can give anyone a good series of games as long as my head's on straight, and it's proving in practice. So I'm kind of waiting for that in tournaments. So I have a couple more MLGs. There's always Clan Wars. There's always online leagues, and then there's always show matches and that kind of thing. So I'd like to sit here and say that I want to shoot for the heavens and try to win a tournament, but I think that would be almost arrogant of me to say right now. So my goals are much more, I would say, specific to just making myself happy with a good tournament result, making it into the championship bracket, going deeper in a tournament, and beating good players as opposed to beating the fluff and then losing to the first good player I face. As far as team expectations are concerned, EG is doing great. It's really funny because the expectation for EG, and I talk about this across the board, so some people might be sick and tired of me saying this, but the expectation is everyone that enters a tournament either wins, or if they don't, they get kind of berated. Like Puma gets 3-0'd by MC, no big deal. He's one of the best Protoss on the planet, but you're seeing a lot of people say, like, you know, what is he doing with his practice time? Is the EG curse? Well, he's actually in the top rankings of the Slayer's house, and he's actually one of the frickin' best Terrans there is. So these kind of things happen, but at the end of the day, EG is not satisfied with making those excuses, and I'm not happy being the guy that sits on my shows and says, you know, back off a little bit. I'm going to stop saying that kind of stuff right after this interview, I promise. What's going to end up happening is EG is going to focus. You're going to see a better Thorzane. You're going to see a Puma that's going to get into the GSL. JYP is going to be that Protoss sniper that he was for Team TSL. And with Greg getting more comfortable, with Huck kind of battling his demons right now, and with the rest of our squad working to be a good support network, I think that's something you can look at EG. It's going to be a team that wins tournaments but also has consistent, decent, and good results across the board. I'm getting tired of making excuses. I sound stupid when I do it, and I feel dumb doing it, so I'm going to keep working on that, and hopefully we'll just across the board become a better team.
With this constant, absolute exposure to esports and the community in general, do you ever worry about burning out? And what kinds of things do you do to keep yourself motivated?
Burning out is definitely a concern just because esports is such an all-consuming thing. We live in a team house. Everyone else in the team house is involved with what we do. There is no real break. Even when we're hanging out, we're hanging out together, and we're all good friends, so that's awesome. But just everything about our lives is StarCraft or StarCraft related. So burnout's definitely a possibility. It's nothing I've ever been too worried about because, I don't know, I'm capable of working really hard even when I'm not particularly motivated. It's obviously less productive. It's not as good, but I'm able to work through it, and then eventually something clicks, and I'm like, I really want to win again. Let's go do that. So it's not something I'm too worried about. I feel I'll be able to keep working at this as long as I want to, and I will then have something to move on to when I choose to. I'm not going to be forced out. I'm able to keep doing this as long as I want. As for avoiding burnout, it's really just trying to get time to yourself. It varies from person to person, but for me, it's just every once in a while, I need to have a few weekends where I don't go to a tournament. And I tell EG that, and they're incredibly supportive. They're just like, okay, you have that time off, you do what you need, you know what's best for you. And then I come back down the road, and I'm better, I'm ready to represent the team again, and they're absolutely understanding of that, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question because a lot of people are really hyper-focused and they're very interested in the idea of a team house. They hold it up to the Korean model where they talk about how, you know, a 12-year-old enters and a Codes Protoss leaves a couple years later, and why is that not happening with EG? And I've reflected a lot about that, and I think one of the things that still needs exploration and work, to be honest, is that when you look at those Korean pro gaming houses, especially in Brood War, they would do things like go out and paintball, they would go out and mountain climb, they would do things that would build camaraderie, but more importantly, they'd get away from the game and they'd give those people space to breathe. Now, there's endless ways to make that a false comparison, I would say, because there's definitely different cultures at play here. But for us, as a mostly Western team in a pro gaming house where we do practice 10 hours a day with StarCraft, and the expectation is that we win everything we play. I mean, there's no time where it's like, oh, you were supposed to lose that. It's always you're supposed to win everything you play. I think that has actually worked its way as almost a cancerous tumor in a lot of us. I can speak to myself. In 2011, I was, I actually got corrected about saying depressed because I didn't go to see a doctor. So maybe it wasn't a depression. Maybe it was just I was really sad. I don't know. It was a really hard year, and a lot of that was dealing with all the attention we get, all the pressure on us, and then the lack of success, and that kind of spirals and kind of creates its own beast. So in 2012, we're trying, like Greg and I have talked about this, the team's talked about, let's go see a play, let's go see a movie, something stupid. We actually saw a stupid play, but we had such a freaking good time doing it that it was a really nice bonding moment. So I think EG is going to look to do that kind of a thing. I mean, if you take a Saturday off and you go do something fun, it's not going to affect your tournament, but it has the potential to create that happiness and that comfort and that mental strength that you need to not burn out and to be a productive, strong, moving forward type of player. So like Greg said, every one of us has their own personal thing like that. For me, it's building Warhammer models or reading a book. For Greg, it's taken easy. I know he reads a lot. Actually, he has 1,400 freaking books on a mechanical pad. The hell. Spending time with my dog, Barrison, something like that. So I think those things are important, and as long as we do that, as long as everyone kind of protects himself that way and does that for other people, I think EG will be that team that is going to put in more work than everybody else. And while we're not the team that wins everything right now, we're trying to be. And if people aren't careful, we will be that team.
Great. Now, if we could shift gears a little bit, iNcontroL, could you tell us a little bit about your tattoo?
Yeah, I've always liked tattoos. I don't have this isn't my firstborn child that then died. It's it's an ace of spades, but it's on my sleeve, as it were, so that it basically is kind of a reminder that there's always something else you can do. You always have one more trick up your sleeve. And on the card it says love, because for me it's really important to remember that basically no matter how bad things get, no matter how negative you can be, you can always just kind of force yourself to be a little bit more positive and try to look at the good stuff. I know that's kind of a silly thing, but for me it's really important because I'm a really critical person, and I get in trouble on the forums actually, because a lot of times when I see something, my first instinct is to tease it, and that is not necessarily my problem, but my problem is that I look at things usually in a pretty negative light. So I try to remind myself that if you are more positive and you look around to see better things, you probably will. And then I have a whole bunch of other tattoos, like vines covering my shoulders, Cave Canem, Beware of the Dog, which is more of it harkens back to my sports career. I was called the dog on all my teams, so it's kind of that's more like of an empowering thing for me. And then I have a literary tattoo on my thigh, which is Edgar Allan Poe's Raven. What else do I have on there? So It Goes on a banner. Kurt Vonnegut Jr. obviously, and then Kurt Vonnegut and Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter actually on its chest, and I have no good reason for that. I just like those books and I like those authors, and that's that.
Nidra, I'm assuming you don't have any ink?
No, I don't.
He has a butterfly on his butt.
We keep that a secret.
What kind of ink would you consider getting?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm not opposed to the idea of a tattoo at all. I actually kind of like it. Geoff and Bryce were considering to go get new ones, and I was thinking about going with them. The only problem is I haven't thought of anything that's cool enough and meaningful enough that I am absolutely sure I want to have on my body for the rest of my life.
Might I suggest something?
Sure.
GG?
Absolutely not. No, I have to give it more thought. It's something I'm interested in. I just haven't found anything that feels right.
One more question. If you guys weren't StarCraft players, what would you be doing right now?
I'd almost definitely be in school, probably for physics. That was what I was going to go into. Maybe I would have gotten bored of that and switched to something else, but probably school.
I think Greg would have been a physicist, but then he would have burnt out and gone really weird, like his third year in, and bought a motorcycle and traveled to South America or something like that. I think that's in you. I actually would have been just as boring. I think I would have been a high school English teacher and probably coached football. My mentor in high school was both those things and was a big impact on my life. So it was really hard for me to look past that and see anything else that was would have as much meaning for me. And I think that's one of the things Greg and I actually talk a lot about. We didn't plan, we didn't wake up one day and go, I'm going to play StarCraft professionally. That's what I want to do. We actually, the sick joke of this is that we used to play this for free, and we probably still would, but it's much nicer to get paid to do it. Greg just shot me a glare. He's like, don't tell him that. But yeah, we would play StarCraft. I would be freaking DJ Wheat playing StarCraft while teaching high school is what I think I would be doing.
Any predictions for this weekend?
We just kind of talked about this. I think I really like how Scarlett's playing. I think she's playing absolutely amazing. One of the ways you can kind of pick out a winner is that they don't just have a lucky run. Like, you could actually maybe talk about her run through IPL as a bit of a lucky run. She hadn't been to a tournament, so expectations were very low, and she did very great. But here at WCS, people were talking about her, and they were expecting her to do well, and she's not disappointing. She's not only not dropping maps, but she's beating good players in convincing fashion offline. And that's, any StarCraft player anywhere will tell you that's how we judge a good player, and she's proving that she absolutely deserves that recognition. So WCS, it's Scarlet the whole way, as far as I'm concerned. NASL, I don't want a ZVZ finals. I think that's incredibly boring. But with Stefano manhandling MC, at least last we saw, and with Rhett facing Alicia, who I'm going to steal Greg's analysis and say is a lesser PvZ player than Puzzle, it's looking like it will be a ZVZ final. And I like both those guys, but Rhett's kind of been, my boy for a long time, and I'd like to see him win a major tournament.
Yeah, this is going to be a little boring. We agree pretty well on this. Scarlet, I haven't seen her games, but her results have been incredibly impressive. I saw her play in IPL TAC. She kind of manhandled Inori, who's been doing well versus Zerg, sorry. He actually 5-0'd his All-Zerg group in GSL. She made him look pretty easy. She also beat Revival, who's been doing really well for TSL in the GSTL recently. She just looks really good, and like he said, this is her second offline event. She's proving that wasn't a fluke, and she's going through pretty much the best opponents in the tournament with ease, making them look easy, not dropping a map. She's now in the winner bracket final, waiting on either DD or Didoro, and she's a lot better than both of them, just in terms of absolute skill, and she seems unflapped by the whole offline tournament atmosphere. And to find a young player who's really new to competition, who has that capability and plays very well, just on top of that, we could see a lot more than just this tournament from her, but I definitely expect her to take WCS pretty handily. I don't think it really matters who she plays in the finals. And then for NASL, Alicia, not as good as Puzzle PvZ. Puzzle had just gotten off the plane, but Alicia, same story with him, and he's now been sitting here playing for a few hours. He went through Huck, unfortunately, pretty easily. 3-0, we only saw the last game, but 3-0, it's hard for that to be too close, no matter how good the games are. So maybe he's playing better. Maybe he's less affected by that. Maybe he'll be crisper and sharper than Puzzle was. And Puzzle did make some unnecessary risks, weird strategical decisions. He looked really, really good on Daybreak, and he kind of manhandled Rhett there. So maybe Alicia could get through. But again, Rhett, longtime friend of both of us, I'd be pretty happy if he made it through. Not hoping for that to not happen at all. And then MC for Stefano, it was 3-2 in favor of Stefano before we came in here, but I don't hear the audience now, so it might be 4-2 and over.
I think so.
Yeah, that would be unfortunate. I'd love to see MC in the finals versus Rhett. MC just a great, entertaining player. PvZ a lot more fun to watch than ZVZ. If it is ZVZ, that should match up neither of the players like. Stefano explicitly says out in public he doesn't practice ZVZ. There they go. Maybe it's still going. I don't know. But Stefano explicitly says in public he doesn't like ZVZ, he doesn't practice it. Rhett doesn't like it much either, he doesn't practice it a ton either. But he is more of a dedicated professional player than Stefano. He does still practice a lot. He does play all the matchups. He knows it's his job, and he knows he's responsible for stuff like that. So I think he would be the more prepared player, and I like him more, so I'm going to call Rhett to win.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. Any message for your fans and sponsors? The mic is yours.
Yeah, thank you for the interview. Thank you for everyone watching, and especially thank you to everyone who came out and made this an awesome event. We didn't really get to talk about it, but this has been absolutely incredible. One of the best live events I've ever been to. And then, of course, thanks to Evil Geniuses, all our sponsors, Intel, Monster, Steel Series, Kingston HyperX, Beyond Gaming, and Sapphire.
And, of course, being from Evil Geniuses, I'd echo those sentiments. But I also want to give a special shout out to you guys, ESFI. Thank you so much. It was right after my Christmas break in December where I said esports needs good journalism, and I think I'm not going to take credit, obviously. That would be, well, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. You guys have done an amazing job, and you've really, I know this is kind of weird because we're like 2 feet away and I'm complimenting the crap out of you guys, but you deserve it. You're doing good journalism that I think is getting pretty damn close to the truth. And I got to say, the GESL article,
That was
Go on,
that
please.
was good. I appreciate journalism. Outside of that, I just, thank you guys for checking this out. NASL has been absolutely awesome, and I read everything that gets tweeted at me and posted on the forums for the most part. Actually, I probably shouldn't say that second part, but I just want to say, thank you guys so much for the support. Every time I go to these events, I feel almost a little bit ashamed as a commentator. I really do think I need to be competing, and I want to be winning, but people have always just been so positive and supportive and thanking me for basically just doing what I do in my presence, and it makes this the best job on the whole planet, and it wouldn't be that way without you guys. So thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for your time, guys, and good luck.